Good morning, church. Man, if you're visiting with us today, we are glad you're here, and you are our honored guest. I pray you'll fill out one of those little blue cards you may find around you and just leave it in the seat. We'll pick it up. But more than that, we'd like you to just stick around a little bit so we can get to know you, and thank you for being here. And if you're ever back this way again, we pray you will come join us again. There we go. We have been in a study. I say this every time because we've been there since January, but we're working our way through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, looking at the life of Jesus. As you can tell by everything around him, he is the one we want to proclaim. He is the one we want to be about. He is the one we are about. And so there's no better way to proclaim him than to know him. So that's what we're devoting this entire year to knowing him better by looking at his four Gospels. This morning we're going to take a look at an episode in Luke, and I think I really believe it'll have an impact on you because I know it has on me. Simply because it is so universal in application. Because here's the thing, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you do, I don't care what you've been through, I don't care your level of education, I don't care your level of spirituality, I don't care how much money you have, but if you're in here, everybody at one time or another has a bad day. All right? I mean, there's just something about, thanks Shane, we recognize those guys back in the booth. They don't get too much attention back there, but I like it. We have a bad day every once in a while, do we not? I mean, things don't go the way we want them to go. Things go terribly wrong sometimes. We're human. Things just happen that get us down. And that results in just a downright lousy day. It's kind of like that picture. It's kind of like that picture that gets taken that you wish had never been taken. Whether that's your driver's license photo or your passport photo or maybe one of those photos that your parents like to take of you when you're little and then bring out when you're like 16 or 17 or 18 and show all your friends, oh, look at what she looked like when she was 4. Or look at what he looked like when he dressed up like Tinkerbell for Halloween, right? You know, and it's like, you know that picture's out there, but you don't want anybody to see it. You know, just recently I was made aware of a picture of a young man who is currently courting my daughter. And this picture doesn't shed him in the greatest light, so to speak, especially for the father of the girl he's courting. Okay, not that he's doing anything wrong. And I made him aware that I was in possession of said picture and told him that I would use said picture. And now with the advent of technology and PowerPoint and new big screens all over the place, would you like to see the picture? Y'all are mean. I'm not going to show it to you today. I'm not. I really thought about it. But he's on his way to Greece, and I'm going to save it till I need it. Because there will come a time when I need to use that leverage. So, honestly, I want to experience his reaction here. I want to see the look on his face when I put it up there, right? I know that's cruel, but I'm a dad. What do you do, right? The problem with those pictures, the problem with those snapshots, though, is sometimes we feel like we're characterized by that picture. Right? I mean, like, that's just one moment of one day, but that's kind of how we're defined. And all too often, what happens in life, even we sometimes believe the snapshot that gets taken of us. And we take one little picture from one moment in time, and it might be bad, it might be horrible, and all of a sudden we believe that snapshot, and we go, oh, my life is bad, it's horrible. That was just one moment. You know, there's a story in the Bible about a young lady, and I really believe she's been characterized by a snapshot. I believe she had a bad day, and she gets characterized by that bad day. If I mention the name Martha, everybody knows the story. Everybody knows the story. And she gets snapshotted into this picture of, man, she was having a bad day, right? But nobody remembers that same Martha, which we're going to look at her story in a minute, but nobody remembers in John chapter 11, verse 27, Martha is the one who, just like Peter, which in Peter's case we call his confession the what? The great confession. Martha says this, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Guess what? She says exactly what Peter says. But Peter gets credit for being the great confessor. Martha gets credited for being the one who complains about not getting any help in the kitchen, right? It was that one little snapshot of Martha, and she gets characterized. Let's take a look at it. Look at it with me this morning, because I understand we all have bad days. And here's the thing. Her day started off incredibly great. Look at Luke chapter 10. That's where we're at, Luke chapter 10. If you got your Bibles, go there. Her day starts off awesome. Verse 38. And they went on their way. I think it's up there. Oh, back up one. They went on their way. Jesus entered a village. As they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. And a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. The they there refers to Jesus and his 12 disciples. The village that they entered is most likely Bethany. Bethany is on the eastern slope of Mount Olivet, and it's a couple of miles from Jerusalem. It was Jesus' usual stopping place anytime he was headed to Jerusalem because he had friends there. Okay? Martha is here. She's at this house. She's probably the oldest of 3 siblings. She's got a sister Mary. She's got a brother Lazarus, which we all have heard of. So Martha goes and she invites Jesus into her home. Now, Luke doesn't tell us for sure whether or not Lazarus is there, but I can assume he would be, okay? Luke also doesn't tell us if the other 12 are there, but I also assume they would be as well, because I can't imagine any woman walking up to a group of people and inviting one person out of it to come for dinner. You invite them all. So understand this. I picture this scene unfolds, and Martha sees Jesus. She knows he's coming to town. The group is with him, and she says, hey, why don't y'all come over to the house for dinner? Now, ladies, let me just, you help me out here a little bit here. If my math is right, that's 16 folks. Okay? And it's not 16 folks that are invited to dinner a week from now. It's 16 folks that are invited to dinner right now. Okay? How many of you know what it's like to feed 16 people on the spur of the moment? I mean, she can't just jump on her camel and run down to Fusakli's and pick up a box of chicken strips, right? I mean, she can't do that. But she understands when she invites 16 folks, this is what's going on. So she invites them in, which kind of leads us into maybe the source of how her day is going to end up. Okay, so she invites them all in, and I get this picture in my head because I've been in situations like this. My dad had 12 brothers and a sister, and so when we go over there for family meals and stuff, you can imagine, each one of the brothers had 4 or 5 kids, and the cousins and grandma had a house that was about 900 square feet, and so it was wall-to-wall tackets. Okay, but you know what? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. We were family, we were sitting around, we were talking, and in every case, the guys and the kids are playing, and some are out in the front yard, and some are in the backyard, and the brothers are all usually in the living room, and grandma and all the daughter-in-laws are in the kitchen, and, there's conversation going on, and the smell of food is being prepared. You kind of get that picture. You had that picture before in your head, right? I kind of see that's what's going on here. The disciples are there. Lazarus is there, they're cooking. You kind of got the best of the physical and the spiritual going on at the same time. It's kind of like when we have potluck Sundays around here, right? Man, it's the hardest time in the world to preach or teach. Because number one, you can smell all the food back there. And number two, I know that you can smell all the food back there. And you're thinking about the food and not thinking about what I'm saying, which may be what's going on here as well, okay? So this scene it kind of unfolds for us. We see this taking place. And then in verse 39, it says she meaning Martha, had a sister named Mary. And Mary was sitting, who sat at the feet of the Lord and listened to his teaching. A couple things I just want to point out real quick, okay? Sitting at the feet of a teacher or a rabbi has kind of a double significance. Number one, a student of a rabbi literally sat at the feet of his teacher and would listen to him, just as Mary was doing. But it also signified that the one who was sitting at the feet was a follower or a disciple of the one at whose feet she was sitting. So two things here. Mary is identifying herself as a follower of Jesus, and she is learning what Jesus is teaching. We see she's sitting there, okay? So put yourself in this kind of frame of mind. If you remember, Paul alludes to this for himself. He said he was educated at the feet of Gamaliel in Acts 22:3. Okay, same exact verbiage here going on. So Mary's learning. We see Mary, she's there, listening, learning. Now put yourself, again, in the house and smell the bread baking and see Jesus talking, and you see Mary on the floor, and you see all the disciples around, and they're bantering or talking or maybe laughing or joking or whatever. This is going on. It's the perfect day. It's a wonderful day. And you know, here's the thing. If our attitudes are right, every day can be special. It was the psalmist who had plenty of bad days, said what? This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us what? Rejoice. Be joyful and be glad in it. Martha started her day by inviting the Lord to be a part of her life. She invited him into her home to enjoy fellowship with him. Any day and every day can be a great day for you and me, depending upon who we invite into it. But most of us, something happens to upset our great and wonderful day. In verse 40, we see the beginning of this for Martha. In verse 40, it says, Martha was distracted with much serving. The Greek word for distracted means to allow her attention to wander or to be cumbered. Most likely the house was essentially one large room. There wasn't like a separate kitchen. The food was being prepared in one section. They were in another section talking. And with all of the conversation and attention given to Jesus, and maybe with what Jesus is teaching, that Martha's trying to figure out, well, did I put the bread in the oven? But wait, what did he say? And she's trying to do both at the same time. And it irritates her to some degree. The NIV says it this way: Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. You see, in her mind, all of these things had to happen. They had to get done. But here's the thing: nowhere in the text does it say anyone requested anything in particular. I would probably go so far as to say Jesus probably said, we don't need anything fancy. We don't need anything big, just some food. But in Martha's mind, the preparations, all of it had to get done. Let me ask you something today. This is true for me. I don't know about you, but a lot of times my bad days start with unreasonable expectations. Right? Often it's these expectations that I've imposed upon myself, not necessarily the expectations imposed upon me by others. And when that happens, no matter how good my motives are, it can make my day get bad quickly. I know Martha's motives were good. I know that. I know she wanted to give her Lord the very best. I know she wanted to prepare the very most. She wanted it to be as grand and great as he deserved. And in her mind, it had to be done. And because she thought it had to be done, she comes to Jesus for help. And in verse 4, last part of 40, she says this: she went to him, to Jesus, and she said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. Again, the NIV translates this: my sister has left me to do all the work by myself. I don't know if you grew up with a sibling or you grew up with other people in the house, you know how this works. And I have no doubt in my mind, all the necessary subtle hints have already taken place, right? Martha's in the kitchen getting ready. Mary's over here at the feet of Jesus in the living room. And Martha's doing everything she can to get Mary's attention. She slams the oven door. She rattles the pots around in the sink. Right? All those, she picks something up. She's moving around in there, and all this time, and every time she does one of those things, her eyes go straight to Mary. But Mary's eyes are transfixed on her Lord. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Mary is intentionally ignoring Martha. I really believe Mary is so in tune with what Jesus is saying, she has no idea what's going on anywhere else. That's not a bad thing. But it gets to the point where Martha then allows all of this to boil up, and she goes to Jesus, and I find it interesting. The first words out of her mouth are what? Lord, don't you care? Don't you care? Now, again, picture this. 16 people in this little house. I don't know how big the house is. I'm assuming it's little. Okay? Jesus is in the middle. They're all talking. They're all listening. Martha comes from the kitchen right into the middle of the group and pronounces to Jesus, Lord, don't you care? Mary's just sitting here doing nothing. Would you tell her to get up and help me? Now, you ever been in a family setting when something like that happens? Somebody bursts in or somebody gets mad and spouts off, or somebody says something they wish they hadn't said. What does it do to the atmosphere of the entire room? Everybody shrinks back a little bit. Everybody looks at everybody else. Everybody looks at Jesus. Everybody looks at Mary. Everybody looks at Martha. I don't know what made Martha's day turn bad. Maybe the lamb was dry. Maybe the cake fell. Maybe she burned the biscuits. I don't know. Maybe on top of that, she had a splitting headache. Who knows? But on top of that, what I do know is she compounded the problem by complaining about it. Did that ever happen to you? Do you ever have a bad day? I know you do. But do you ever seek someone then out to share it with? I don't mean to talk to about. I mean to say, if I'm going to have a bad day, then so are you. Remember the old adage, misery loves what? Company. It's kind of like if mama ain't going to be happy, ain't nobody going to be happy. Right? Okay? Why? It's like we can't get through it unless we do. Okay? You see, we started this whole afternoon, this whole time in a delightful domestic scene. Jesus teaching God's word, Mary at his feet, the others listening, the aroma of food cooking in the kitchen. Then the day turns sour and a gloom settles over Martha's house, all because Martha was overly concerned about things that simply were not that important. Important, yes, but not that important. It's not hard to make a good day into a bad day. Start with a crust of unreasonable expectations, stir in a little impatience to taste, add a cup of self-pity, 2 tablespoons of entitlement, bake it until it's good and hot, and then when you pull it out of the oven and it's steaming, sprinkle on top some words spoken without thinking, and voila, dinner is served. And your good day becomes a bad day really quick. But the story doesn't end here. Look at Jesus' response in 41. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. I've often wished that we had these conversations recorded in some way so we could hear Jesus' tone of voice as he talks to Martha. What I know is John 11, verse 5, tells us that Jesus loved Mary. This is not a one-time occurrence. These people knew each other, and they had a deep relationship with one another. So I have to understand that while Jesus' words to Martha on this day, yes, conveyed some disappointment, it was also conveyed in love. Jesus tells her that she's anxious, she's worried, she's troubled, she's fretting. Those words all come from the root Greek word that means pieces, Literally, Jesus is telling her, look, you're falling to pieces over all the things that you thought had to get done. She was torn up on the inside, and it affected everything on the outside to the point that she was now making life miserable for everyone around her. She's now transformed this entire process into gloom. But then in 42, he says, one thing, only one thing is necessary. I really don't think he's talking about one dish of food. I don't think he's saying, all you really needed to do was fix one thing. You should have just done mac and cheese. Everybody would have been fine. I don't think that's what he's saying. He's telling her, I think, that what is necessary when he says the very next words, Mary has chosen the good portion which will not be taken away from her. And we're not talking about a portion of food either. We're talking about a portion of understanding and learning from Jesus. You see, Mary had focused on the spiritual. Mary had chosen to sit at the feet of the eternal. Mary chose to listen to Jesus. Mary was more concerned about spiritual food than physical food. Now, we'll talk about it in a minute. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Martha being in the kitchen cooking food. Nothing. You see, many of our good days turn into bad days because we fall to pieces over things that are here today and then gone tomorrow, things that no one will care about in 20 years, instead of focusing our attention on the things that really matter. You see, sometimes relationships, which God values above all else, are even destroyed over things that simply do not last, things that don't matter. So bad as it might have been for Martha in her mind initially, it's just gotten worse. She's just been rebuked by the very one who she set out to serve. She set out by inviting Jesus into her house to honor him, to serve him, and yet she's been rebuked by him. But at the same time, I'm totally sure Martha's day got better as she reflected on Jesus' words. I'm sure she profited from her bad day. And I don't want to leave any study of Martha with that snapshot. I don't want you just to have that picture of Martha that says, oh, she's the one that got mad. Because let's just face it, we all have that snapshot, do we not? We all have that point in time in our lives where we're glad nobody videotaped us or recorded us or whatever, because that, and if they did, what do we come back with? That's not who I am. And you're right, it's not who you are. You're not defined by that snapshot. Because again, I take you back to John 11:27. Martha is the exact same one that will declare to all those around, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. A great confession. She understood who Jesus was. I believe she understood who Jesus was at some certain points, even more so than the 12 did. But then the very next chapter, John chapter 12, look at this scene. 6 days before Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany where Lazarus was. Bethany again, I'm guessing same house. Where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Same context. We're going to have dinner again. Where? Martha's house. The very next line. Martha served. That's it. Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. Mary, therefore, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Exact same setting, different time. Only this time, there's no mention of Martha upset about Mary not doing anything. Is Mary helping this time? Nope. What's she doing? She's off rummaging through perfume, finds a big bottle of perfume and comes back in and decides to anoint Jesus' feet with it. Now, my mother, if this would take place in my house, I can hear it right now. Do you really think this is the best time to be breaking open a bottle of perfume right before we're going to eat? Can you not smell the biscuits? Everybody's biscuits is now going to smell like perfume, right? No mention of Martha except for 2 words that now define her. What? Martha served. Did she learn her lesson? I think she did. I think she learned her lesson the first time. Because understand this, sometimes our bad days can teach us how to have good days in the future. Bad days become good days when we learn from the bad things that happen and we don't repeat them. Bad days become good days when they can strengthen us as a result, because we see the Lord's work in it. We'll all have bad days from time to time, but we can look back on them and simply declare, God used those days to teach me, to build me up, to rely on Him more. And then, unlike Martha, we can even walk away from those bad days exclaiming, yes, Jesus does care. He does care. He cares if you have a bad day. But sometimes you have a bad day so you can learn something through it. Couple of things, and the lesson is yours. Couple of just points I want to make about bad days that you can hang on to. The first is simply this. Realize that everyone does have a bad day now and then. Even Walter has a bad day now and then. You're all laughing because you know why I used Walter for that example. Walter is the most cheerful, the most happy. He's always got a smile on his face. I mean, if Mr. Rogers ever needed a stand-in, Walter would be it. I'm embarrassing him. He's turning red. Now everybody's looking at you now, Walter. But you understand what I'm saying? Well, I love you, Walter. You just brighten my day every time I see you. But even Walter has a bad day from time to time, right? You're not alone. We all do. We all do. It's a boat we've all sailed in. The difference is how we're gonna have an attitude that takes us out of it, that we can learn from. But you're not alone. The second is simply this. We all have a tendency to blame others for our bad days. Now, right off the bat, let me just say this. I fully understand and I fully recognize that sometimes other people are responsible for our bad days. I get that wholly and totally. I know sometimes some people do all they can to make sure you have a bad day. I get that. But sometimes we have a tendency to blame everybody for everything other than looking at ourselves. And does it help in the end? In the end? Only if we can learn from it. Only if we can learn from it. When we have a bad day, it's usually not because of the bad things that have happened, but how we respond and react to what has happened. How do we respond to it? How do we react to it? Third, recognize there are consequences as we react to what has happened to us. There was a consequence to Mary reacting to her bad day. When she goes and tells the Lord, hey, get Mary up to help, she gets rebuked from Jesus. As bad as your day may be, you also need to understand there's consequences to how you react in it. Okay, and understand, in our world today, we live in a world that is pretty much devoid of consequences anymore. We want to swipe, get rid of them altogether. But the reality is there are consequences to be had. Maybe the most important, I don't know, the last two. Recognize the fact that a bad day is not the last word in our lives unless we make it so. Your bad day, your bad snapshot, your bad picture, your bad experience, your bad week, your bad month, your bad year does not define you. It does not define you. The sins of your past do not define you. The problems you had at work, the problems you've got in your family, the problems you've got with your spouse, the problems you've got with your kids, they do not define you unless you allow it to. Martha could have been defined by this episode. But yet we see her proclaiming, I believe this is the Son of God. We see her serving again. We see her at the cross. We see her at the tomb. We see her all over the place. This doesn't define her. It doesn't have to define you either, and it shouldn't. And lastly, I'll give you this. Determine to learn from bad days what is really important in life. Look at what's made your bad day bad and go, listen, what is making this a bad day? What is destroying my happiness? What is causing me to make those around me miserable or sad? Once you've isolated the cause, ask yourself, is this really that important? If we can learn from what happens to us, then bad days can become good days. We can learn from it. We can grow from it. Everybody does have a bad day from now and then, but this day can be the best day of your life if you simply learn from the story of Martha to put spiritual things first in your life. You know, Jesus didn't rebuke Martha for working in the kitchen, not at all. Her work in the kitchen was a necessary thing to do. They had to eat. Somebody had to cook it. Somebody had to serve it. The issue wasn't the work. It was the attitude Martha had about it. I mean, think about it for a minute. She was feeding the Messiah. She was preparing food for the Son of God. How cool is that when you think about it? I mean, we go, I know you ladies, you go all out when you cook if you think somebody's coming over, right? I mean, because we want to impress, you know? What would you cook for God? Think about that. What would you cook for God? Mac and cheese and a bologna sandwich? Why not? He made it. It's his, right? Martha could have shown her love, her devotion, her honor for Jesus through the work she was doing. But she chose to allow the attitude to hamper that. Jesus was on spot when he said one thing is essential. One thing can never be taken away from you, no matter how bad your day is, and that's your commitment to the Lord. I don't care how bad of a day you have, that will be there. You know, I don't know what kind of day you've had so far, but you can make it a good day. You can make it a great day. You can make it an awesome day by determining to take the time to sit at Jesus' feet, to learn from him, to do his will. This morning, understand, if you're not in a relationship with God through Jesus, then why not consider allowing Jesus to deal not only with your bad day, but with a bad eternity? Because the reality is, according to God's word, if you've not yet confessed him as Lord, if you've not repented of your sins and started turning your life back to God, if you've not been baptized into his death, burial, and resurrection, if you haven't done this, let me be honest with you, when Jesus comes back, and he is coming back, it's going to be a really, really bad day. And not only is it going to be a bad day, it's going to be a bad eternity. But the reality is, it doesn't have to be. Because by sitting at his feet, you know what he expects. You know what he wants. You know how much love he has for you. You know how much care he has for you. He desires you to be in a relationship with him so you can sit at his feet and learn. Maybe today you're ready to commit to him. Maybe you've just had so many days that you just can't see any lessons coming from it. You can't learn anymore. And maybe you'd like us to pray for you, to walk with you, to help you in the kitchen, so to speak. Let us help in whatever way we can. Jesus cares about your bad days. And you know what? So do we. So I would say this morning. If you need either, you're ready to put him on in baptism, you're ready to commit your life to him, let us know. If you need prayers, if you need help, if you need encouragement, if you need to see lifting up, let us know. Whatever we can do, let us know as we stand and as we sing.